Hey, welcome everybody to Pro Mindset Podcast. This is your host, Craig Domann today. I am jacked up, fired up. I've got a very special guest today, my son, Brock Domann. Brock is is number 3 in the family tree. He's the number 1 quarterback in the family. He is, Brock, how old are you now?
27.
He's 27. He finally hung up the cleats of playing football. He's been playing football since he was about, how old?
Like 5.
2. So
2.
anyway, he's finally given up the game. He's going to pass on his wisdom to future generations. Brock Domann, thank you for being on Pro Mindset today.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, Brock's been on Pro Mindset a couple times and done an awesome job. I think today is going to be a grand slam for Brock just because he has so much more knowledge and experience. He's got international experience. He's always been a man, but he's really a man at the moment because he's seen it. He's been through it. He's navigated it. So Brock, let's start out by going down memory lane and kind of just sharing with people your dream when you were 7, 8, 9, 10 years old.
Yeah. So science backs this up that from 0 to 7 is the structuring of our subconscious. And so we're not even fully aware that we're alive yet as humans until right around that 7 years old. And so by the time I was conscious that I was a human, I already knew that I wanted to be an NFL player. And that had everything to do with, I think a lot of it has to do with just what God places on your heart, but also a lot has to do with your environment. And growing up with you being an NFL agent, having NFL guys around all the time, and just having football on all the time, I think I must have absorbed a lot, right? From 0 to 7 to where, I didn't even know how to tie my shoes yet, but I knew I wanted to be a football player. So I think that's where it started. It started before I knew when it started. And it was obviously deeply embedded in me because I stuck through things that if I had to go back over and go through again, I wouldn't go through. So I must have been pretty deep in there.
Okay, so let's just dive in here, bro. Share with the audience one thing that you went through because you had this will and because you had this dream and because you were persistent and all these things that are all positive things. You just like went through the storm when a lot of people would have shut it down. And a lot of your friends, and I told you this when you were going off to college, not very many guys are going to play college ball. College football is going to be hard. And you probably looked at me like I'm crazy, but college football is hard. It's a business.
Mm-hmm.
And you stuck it out because you played 7 years of college football and 2 years of international football.
Great.
So that's 9 years of football beyond high school. Most people show up on a college campus unless they're a 4-star, 5-star. They literally quit after the first year. Your old man made it for 2.5. And, I saw how hard it was. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So share with the audience, what is one thing that because of your mindset, you made it through when a lesser version of you would have quit?
Yeah, I think there's really something about drawing a line in the sand. And I remember my days in junior college when I had nothing promised to me. I had to make something of myself. I had to will myself each and every day to get better, to even have a chance at getting a Division I scholarship. And I remember when I was in California. So let me back up. My senior year of high school was extremely important for my journey. Won the state championship and ultimately just had a really, really positive year socially, just in all the aspects. I felt very well rounded and I felt very supported and just it was one of the best years of my life. And so then carrying that energy into Southern California, this was before COVID and all that. There's this energy of people's dreams coming true, right? LA, Hollywood, all this stuff. There's just this energy of making things happen, making your dreams happen. And that's where I carried that senior year energy into. And so, I mean, I believed I could do anything. And I made promises to myself. I journaled all the time in that season of life. And I just committed to the fact that I like literally didn't see myself doing anything else. I couldn't fathom there was no other road for me. You know, the older I've gotten, you know, I think in a lot of ways, I don't think this is necessarily a good thing, but I've started to think about multiple different types of roads. Back in the day, it was one road and I was committed to that, and that was football. And I think that's why it worked out.
So being single-minded, being focused, having no other options. You didn't go to college with the idea that, hey, if football doesn't work out, I'm going to go be a veterinarian or something like that. It was
No,
all balls to the wall, football only. And because of that, you were able to persevere. What was the first big obstacle you got when you went to Ventura as a freshman in college?
yeah, it was the speed of the game, and it was my arm strength. And then a third thing was to bounce back. One was a 5-star, one was a 4-star, one from USC and one from Fresno State. But yeah, so the speed of the game, I mean, there's a huge difference between high school Colorado football and high level college football, because junior college, you can't really put a level on it. It's not D1, it's not D2. It's probably pretty close to FCS football, that level, because you've got a mixture of Power 5 guys and a mixture of probably some D2 guys. So it's probably FCS level, I'd say, is junior college. Yeah, the speed of the game was crazy. I remember that my freshman year. It was so much faster. And then secondly is I in high school I was incredible at, over the back or under the safety kind of throws, or, putting it 9 feet in the air and letting my guy go get it. But what I wasn't good at was lasering the ball, That was Tommy Lazzaro. That wasn't my game. And I'll never forget, my offensive line coach comes up to me in the first 2 weeks I get there. He's like, "Hey man, I see your competitive greatness. I see you've got what it takes in a lot of aspects, but you don't have a college arm. You need to get a stronger arm." So yeah, there was a lot of hurdles. And then I had 0 offers out of high school. So in the recruiting realm of football, your resume is your leverage. Well, I didn't have any leverage. And these guys, whether they were better than me or not, were 5-star bounce back and a 4-star bounce back with offers. So just naturally on paper, that's just how it goes. And so I had to wait my turn.
Hang on a second, Brock. I want to go back. I want to go back to the day that the offensive line coach, who really liked you, if I remember correctly, he was
Yep.
a big fan. He loved your character, your leadership, all that stuff. When he told you you didn't have a college arm, what happened up here? What happened in your mind? How did you process that? Because most people, when you're told something that you didn't believe, you think he doesn't know what he's doing because he's an offensive line coach. He's not a quarterback coach. He's not an OC. Or maybe he doesn't like me as much as I thought he did. How did you process that? And what was your response to that? Because football and life are so similar, especially in the sense of when you find out you've got a shortcoming or weakness, you get a choice. You can either make it stronger or quit.
Yeah, I think because it was him, and he kind of did this sandwiching approach where he built me up, then he critiqued my arm, and then built me up again. And I think just his approach and his energy towards me, it really got to me in actually a pretty positive way, because it was coming from him. Because it wasn't like, "Hey, you don't have a college arm, I'm writing you off." It was like, "Hey, you've got all of these things. If you can improve this, you've got a real chance." So I think it was actually received really well. And I think also, when you get really real with yourself, we all love to play with ourselves and lie at times, or not fully face the truth, but I knew that I didn't have a college arm. I knew that there were certain routes that were tougher for me to make, and I would try to hide that in my game. Where I think once I got gray shirted and was told that and everything, it was almost like a relief off my back. Like, hey, like I've got time to really not have to hide any part of my game and really like develop this aspect.
Okay, so we're gonna leave Ventura in just a moment, but Ventura was your first stop on many, and you did gray shirt, but because of JUCO rules, you were able to practice and be the scout team quarterback for a year.
Mm-hmm.
And because you couldn't dress, they put you in the press box with the OC. So share with the audience how beneficial those two things were for your development so that the next year you showed up better.
Yeah, I got the privilege. One of the coolest coaches I've had the opportunity to get to know is Ryan Clayton. He's now an offensive line coach, I think, at Northern Iowa.
Now he's at Penn State.
He's at Penn State. That's right. He was at Northern Iowa.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Incredible dude. He was part of the historic run that Oregon had at offensive line with Mariota and all them. Yeah, I got to really learn from an offensive coordinator's perspective how football works. And a player's world of football and a coach's world of football are two different worlds. So being able to fully submerge myself in this whole different world was incredibly beneficial because I used to just like hang my hat on that I'm a playmaker, right? I had to work on becoming a better practice player. And I just like was like, my competitive greatness is what carried me in my early years. It wasn't my self-discipline. It wasn't my technique. It wasn't schematically out scheming the other team. It was just that it factor. That's what I had. And that was my foundation, but I needed to build upon that. And so learning the game of chess was the biggest thing, learning the X's and O's and learning how to use this thing way more.
Okay. So the next time you had a very successful season at Ventura. You guys went like, I can't remember, like 10-2 or something like that.
It was 11-2.
11-2. And that was a very strong year for you. Very strong year. Then COVID came and you ended up at Independence Junior College, Last Chance U. And the thing that I'll never forget about Independence was I wanted you to go somewhere else, but I wanted you to make your own decision. But instead of having conflict with your own man, you decided to call Independence driving back from a workout and tell him you and commit to him and then come and tell me later, hey, Dad, I'm going to Independence. I'm like, for real? And did you already tell him? Yeah, it was over. I couldn't say anything. So, but here's one thing that did happen. They told you there was going to be like limited quarterbacks in the room, like 4. And there was like 7 or 8. And you didn't find out until they let you out of your dorm room during COVID. And you got a medical and a COVID test and found out there was a bunch of people there. And you called me at like 7 something in the morning saying, Dad, this is BS. They lied to me.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that conversation?
I do. I remember the room I was in. I was sitting on my bed and I was distraught. I felt like I showed up to a date and the girl looked like nothing like in the pictures.
Or she brought her boyfriend with her. So with many years of, in the agent business, I honestly didn't have the answer. I'd never run into that one before. So I didn't have this like pretty little like answer. So I was just asking God, give me some wisdom, man. What's going on here? This is his shot. This may be your last shot. And now all of a sudden,
I was gonna go into real estate if it didn't work out.
So what I remember telling you is if you're thinking what you're thinking, what do you think the other guys are thinking? Because all y'all are thinking the same thing. Like, this is BS. Coaches lied to us. How am I going to get any reps? How am I going to get a fair shot? I already picked their starter because, there's only a month or so of training camp. And the best thing I told you, if you're thinking it and they're thinking it, the best thinker is going to win.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you can go out and do your best without being pissed off at the coaches, holding a grudge, having all that negative energy that everybody had, you could win. So some coaching changes happened, different things happened in a very short period of time. But when they rolled out the ball for the first game, who was the starter?
I was.
You were. So whatever you did, what did you do to conquer that adversity or that challenge?
Well, I always had so much confidence in my mental fortitude and in this internal state of being that I had. I always had so much confidence in that. And it is because there was so many times throughout my journey where the external circumstances were shaky, were uncertain, and really weren't in my favor. And so the only thing I knew how to do was lean on this internal state and my faith in God has been a huge catalyst for my journey. And I think I just knew that like whoever's gonna be the doggiest dog for these next 6 weeks of training is gonna come out on top. And I mean, my back was against the wall. It was either that or go home with my tail between my legs. And I knew that even everything leading up to that, Ventura and Campbell and San Bernardino, all of that, it was just like I was in too deep. I was gonna get mine. I was in way too deep.
So you end up being an All-American at Independence in an abbreviated season due to COVID. Then you found yourself at UCLA working out for Chip Kelly. What was that like? Like, what was the nerves and the stress, the excitement? And you fly to LA, you show up at UCLA. This is kind of what you were hoping for. And how did that go? And what did you need to do differently, if anything, if you got another opportunity?
Yeah, that was so nerve-wracking. I mean, I remember just like feeling like I was fully stepping into my dream. Um, it's funny how much you can dream about something, and then when it's finally in your reality, you're like, it's almost like a little overwhelming. So definitely felt those feelings. And when I got there, I threw extremely well. Um, the only thing I guess I wish I could have done better is, you wish you would have gave me a little more faster legs because 40 after the 40-yard dash, that boy wrote me off.
Did he really?
Thank you. Oh yeah. Yeah. Thank you for your time. We're good. Which that's how like literally by the grace of God, when I did the same exact workout at Louisville, they said, we don't need to see your 40. I said, thank God. We're good. Because I threw great on both of them. I did. Both of them were about 60 reps, right around there, 50, 60 reps. And I remember all the training, everything that's led up to it, my confidence and my accuracy, they're all stationary. Like they would get GAs out there and do top of routes. And I was just on it. So I'm actually really proud of the performances I had in those workouts, but just needed some faster legs. But it worked out. They had like 7 scholarship quarterbacks already or something like that. So I would have been buried at UCLA.
So shortly thereafter, you go to Louisville and you did what you did. And then after your scholarship and you end up at Louisville. From the outside looking in, before you got there, what did you think the biggest challenge was? And then ultimately, what was the biggest challenge at Louisville?
To be honest with you, I was on such a high from stepping into my dream that I was super delusional. I mean, I didn't think I was walking in like, like the hard part's behind me. I mean, I'll never forget. I probably celebrated getting that scholarship to Louisville for maybe 3 or 4 days. And then it was just dead set on like, well, it was always just more and more and more and more and more, which is good, It's what propels you forward. But I just remember being like, I am not satisfied with just getting there. Like, I need to fucking play. Because now it's like when you step into one dream, it opens up your mind to like the next step, which the next step was always professional football. So when I got the scholarship to Louisville, it was like, dude, like it's time to turn up even more now because this can unlock the ultimate step, which was to make make millions of dollars and change your family trajectory forever. Like, I mean, if that's not your goal growing up playing football, I don't know what you're doing.
Yep. Okay, so what was the biggest challenge at Louisville?
Biggest challenge at Louisville is I was fighting against the fact that I came in as an insurance policy. I came in as a very solid backup that they were very happy with. They were happy to give a scholarship to. Obviously, they saw my ability and everything. That's why I got the scholarship. With that being said, there was never a plan for me in that offense. There was never like a vision for Brock Domann to be the quarterback in Louisville. So I think the biggest challenge was just because I was super efficient and just because I was doing my job really, really well, doesn't mean that they changed their mindset around you. To me, I was then just fulfilling like, great, like we can feel good that we have this guy if something happens. Right. So I think that was the biggest challenge is breaking through how a coach views you.
You're preaching to the choir, dude. There's so many athletes face that identical situation. You know, they really don't have a plan for everybody. And even in the NFL, you know, I mean, think about how many guys in free agency this spring have signed new deals and they don't have a plan for them to play. In fact, they honestly just want them to hold a clipboard. They never want their starter to get hurt. But you did start 4 games at Louisville. You played in over 20 games at Louisville. You won a bowl game. You played against Clemson and Death Valley. Kind of what was some of the high water marks of your experience at Louisville?
Yeah, I think that Louisville showed me that you can be a very impactful and a big time leader in an organization, whether this is business or football or whatever. And you don't have to be the face. I was never the face of the program. And yet it was so cool to see how respected and how loved I was there by staff, by teammates, by just putting my head down and working and doing right by people. That was definitely a huge high moment of just like the community and the people that I touched in a positive way. I think too, just gaining the respect of my teammates. You know, it's one thing to get recruited and gain a scholarship, and obviously they don't give out scholarships to anybody. So you definitely have some respect from the coaches when you get there, but it's a whole other ball game to gain respect from your teammates. And I think one of the greatest honors is, you know, the guys that are now in the NFL, you know, thought I was a baller and gaining their respect. And then obviously the games. I think every athlete's goal is to see who they are in the face of the highest competition they can possibly face. And when I found myself in Death Valley playing against Clemson, I think there was like 4 first-round picks on their defense that year, and having some success against that competition, that fulfilled a part of my this super deep part of me that always wanted to know how he measured up against the best.
When Coach Brom came into Louisville, it was your final season of eligibility. He brought in his guy, obviously, Plummer. How did you handle those situations when, very similar to when you got there, they didn't have a vision for you, but you had to carve out your own? And then Coach shows up and he's, you know, a decorated alum. He's been very successful at Purdue and Western Kentucky. He comes in with like a 720 playbook that didn't have any rhyme or reason. There weren't like themes. It was just like names. I can remember vividly you just studying your fanny off But how do you deal? Because people that are listening are dealing with the same thing. Maybe not in the identical circumstances, are dealing with it at work. They're dealing with it somewhere where they're really not given a chance. How do you thrive and how do you be successful in that environment? Because you ended up being QB2 and you had like 3 or 4 or 4 and 5 stars behind you on the depth chart.
Yeah, I know for a fact I had a 5-star behind me. He was at Tennessee before. I had and then I had 3 4-stars behind me.
Yeah. And you were a
So 3
no-star.
4-stars, and I was a no-star.
So what were they thinking being behind a no-star?
Right. Yeah. Nice little humble pie for them. It was great. Yeah. Well, going into that year, first of all, I just came off of a high of starting in 4 games and I think playing in a total of 10 that season. And being a very intricate part of that season. You know, we ended up 8-5, winning the Fenway Bowl in Boston. I felt a very big part of, you know, we got a ring. Like I felt like I was a very big part of that. And there was a lot of guys coming back. So for me, I had the confidence in, yeah, this is a brand new coaching staff, but I have the respect of my teammates. I'm a veteran now. I'm a senior. So I had that swagger and that comfortability of I've been in college football for a minute now. I've been in Louisville now for 3 years. So there's a lot of comfortability. I think that helped a lot. And I had a lot of great relationships on the team. And I think I just, you know, my confidence was sky high. I was playing really good football. And ultimately I believed that I could compete against anyone with a fair shot. I could beat them out. I think what was tough was I genuinely know for a fact I had that competitive greatness over him, but he definitely had the schematics and the chess strategy better than I did. And I give him that.
He also had the trust of the coaches since he played with them before.
He had the trust of the coaches. He also was a 4-year starter in college. I tell you what, it doesn't matter how much practice you get. The greatest way to accelerate performance is playing in real football games. Just real game experience. There's no amount of practice that can give you that accelerated opportunity for growth. So he also had that, and he came in and did a really good job of playing the game of being the conductor of information from the coaching staff to the new players. So it was kind of weird. It was a very interesting situation because I felt like I had the players on my side, but he had the coaches on his side. And at the end of the day, the players have to succumb to the coaches. It's not the coaches succumb to the players. So whoever's ultimately on the coach's side has the leg up. And so that's kind of what happened. And yeah, I got to learn at such a high level how to operate an offense. I think there was emotion in damn near every play. And it was freaking awesome. At first, it was super daunting and overwhelming, the amount of information and then the amount of responsibility, ultimately, the amount of responsibility that was put on the quarterback. But then once you kind of get used to that weight on your shoulders, it is extremely liberating. I mean, if there's one offense I could take with me and as a coach one day, and it would be the Browns offense. I mean, once you get a hang of it and once, man, you can really be such an impactful player at the quarterback position in their offense because there's all these checklist me's. There's all these opportunities for you to, you know, put your nuts on the table and be the freaking leader and lead them to victory. And it's not all on the coaches. Where the last staff, man, we won or lost those games by the coaching staff because we were just puppets. And where the Brahms staff, man, they really They said, "Hey man, you're a playmaker. Show us. we're going to give you the freedom to do that." So yeah, it was an awesome, awesome thing to be able to experience. And I got a little taste of what NFL football is like. And it makes sense that they put that these NFL quarterbacks make 50 million a year, because in those type of offenses, it really is on the quarterback. I mean, you look back on film study, and whether you like it or not, you're in the quarterback room and you're just like, dang, there's there's those 8 plays where if you would have made the play, we win the game. And so it does rest on the quarterback in those type of offenses, which as a quarterback is like the coolest thing ever.
All right, let's shift just for a second, Brock. Everybody's a quarterback of their own life. They're the leader of their own life, their own decision maker, their own playmaker. Each and every one of us has to make our own plays given our situation. What are some of the principles and maybe even areas of life where your experience playing quarterback at a high level is going to help you be successful in your life after football, as well as in coaching people in football?
That's a great question. So being a quarterback and being a entrepreneur is very, very similar. And I think everyone in their own way is semi an entrepreneur, even if you're in corporate, because you still got to bet on yourself. You still got to put your resume in. There's still this, it all ends up coming back to you. Right. And so I think what correlates is there needs to be a detachment from other people's perceptions of you. At quarterback, everyone's looking to you. And it can be overwhelming if you care so much about what those perceptions. It's funny how our brains think that we're so smart that we know what other people are thinking. I promise you, you do not know what other people are thinking, but we think we do.
Absolutely.
My dad gave me this look. That must mean he thinks I'm this, right? We do it all the time. So again, learning to humble yourself of, hey, you don't know what other people are thinking, and whatever they're thinking, it's also subject to change. I mean, how many times have you not liked someone in life, or thought you weren't going to like someone because of what someone else said about them? And then you meet them in person and they're a great freaking person. And you're like, whoa, what happened? Your mindset changed about them. So again, we're also not set in stone with people. So even if you think that people think of you in this way that you wish they didn't, well, guess what? It can change for the better. So I think just like the biggest thing that I've learned is caring most about what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself matters 10 trillion times more than what someone else thinks about you. Because eventually, what you think about yourself and you fully commit to that, eventually other people are going to start mirroring that back to you. I mean, that's what I did in my football career. Is there were so many times that the initial perspective of people of me was I wasn't a good enough quarterback. And I believed and I trusted what I thought about myself enough that I am a great quarterback, that eventually that's what transpired. That's what they had to start thinking like that because of the results that I was producing. So it's the same thing in business and corporate life, whatever you're in. You have to be so stubborn and so just hell bent on what you believe about yourself that eventually that other people are going to have to start seeing you like that. And that's the number one takeaway I have from my career.
Well, one of the things I heard you say multiple times is that the coach doesn't see me the way I see me.
Yeah.
I think what happens is there's a tug of war, there's a battle that goes on when somebody doesn't see you the way you see you, because eventually you're either going to see yourself the way they see you, or they're going to see you the way you see you. And what you basically said there was, let them bend their mind to you instead of you bending your mind to them.
Right. How many times have we allowed other people's perspective to become our truths? You know, like someone comes up to you and is like, hey man, I don't think you could ever, be a business owner. Okay. That's their perspective. Now, if you don't have any personal protection or personal standards for yourself, you're just going to be super wide open and be like, oh my gosh, they're right. I could never be a business owner. I guess I should just go for something realistic, whatever that means. Okay. We literally live on a floating rock in the middle of space. Whatever the fuck realistic is, let me know, because I don't think that exists. But people love to think that there's realistic things, I guess. And, or you can say, hey, that's a perspective that they have of me. And I'm not going to choose to let that into my inner core or my performance bubble. And I am going to actually double down on what I believe in myself. And I'll never forget, I did that so countless times, so many times in my career. By the grace of God, He gave me this ability. I remember so many times when someone didn't believe in me, it actually lit this fire in me and it made me believe in myself even more. Like actually their reflection of lack of belief made my inner belief spark up even more. And it's because that's the only way that I could have done what I did. And so ultimately, transferring this into what I do now, I think the ultimate way to become and to have a successful business is first reflect on your own life, reflect on your needs and your wants, and and if you could be a client, a customer of the coolest thing you can possibly think of, then make that a business. So man, how badly I wished my 16, 2-year-old self could have had a mentor that played professional football, that played Division I football, and won multiple state championships in high school, to hit my DMs and say, hey, man, I've got a mindset container where we just focus fully on you and we dive into how you can bet on yourself more, how you can be more confident in yourself, how you can, double down on everything internally. Holy shit. That would have been the coolest thing ever. I needed that. I had to be that for myself. And so ultimately, I'm so fired up and passionate to do this for the next generation of quarterbacks because this work is needed.
Okay,
You
Brock,
could,
let's back up just for a second. I'm ready to go back and be a college quarterback and hire you to be my coach. So Brock, tell them what you're doing. The name of your business is Conscious Quarterback. Who's it for? What's the impact you want to make? Where are you drawing upon your wisdom? All that kind of stuff.
yeah. So it's for high school and college quarterbacks. And yep, the business is called Conscious Quarterback because, in my opinion, intentionality is everything. There's how many times do you wake up in the morning and you just, pull out the eggs and start making the eggs and you're not even aware of what you're doing. It's just habit. That's why I named it Conscious Quarterback, is because we want to get out of that. We want to get out of just, oh, well, I just go to the field and throw because that's just, just what I do. I do the same drills. I'm comfy. And it's like, you're working hard, yes, but you're working hard unconsciously. How can we set a game plan for yourself where we're intentionally making you uncomfortable? We're intentionally doing new drills. We're intentionally doing new workouts that challenge you, because the only way to grow is to get uncomfortable. I had a trainer growing up that I hated going to. He actually lives down here in Miami now. Absolutely hated going to. You know why? Because he made me get out of my comfort zone every single time. Do you know how many times I went to workouts and I wasn't afraid to go to them? Why? Because they weren't going to go outside my comfort zone. Yeah, I was going to lift heavy weight. Yeah, I was going to, get a good sweat on, but it wasn't going to be too uncomfortable. It was the trainer that made me get out of my comfort zone that scared the shit out of me, that I hated going to. because he's the one that actually made me better. And that's my goal with my business is, I hope I'm a little intimidating. I hope that it is a little, pit in your stomach to start working with me, because we're going to get you uncomfortable. We're going to get you to sit with being really real with yourself. And so that's what I do with guys is I do a one-on-one mindset container, just like this. We do Zoom, and I get guys really vulnerable with themselves. And I first start by being very vulnerable, and guys come out transformed from the inside out. I do nothing physically with them, but it transfers to the physical.
Give one example of where a quarterback struggles because they don't have this conscious quarterback program, that if they did your program, they would show up differently on the field, show up differently in the locker room, show up differently with their relationships with their coach and their teammates, and be able to maybe deal with their failures better and see them as learning lessons and not failures, deal with the media better. All those kind of things that quarterbacks have to deal with. Give us one principle that conscious quarterback's about that your position coach is not doing, the head coach is not doing, dad's not doing, quarterback trainer's not doing, but you do.
Love this question. Okay. The quarterback trainer is focusing on his mechanics, his footwork, maybe his reads. The quarterback coach or the OC is focusing on his reads and his processing. The head coach is looking at his leadership, his moxie, how he presents himself. His dad is looking at how he's speaking when he's on the phone with him, his confidence, but no one is telling him that this is an inside-out game. You can do all the footwork drills you want. You can watch all the film that you want. You can have all the moxie that you want. But if you don't understand that your internal state creates your external state, then you're behind. You're at a tactical disadvantage. Because the guys that make it, the guys that fulfill this dream, they're not focused on the external. And what I mean by that is, what are the coaches thinking about me? What are my teammates thinking about me? Or how did I look on this play? I made a bad throw. What does that mean about me? Our brains are all meaning-making machines. Our brains need to make meaning out of something for it to make sense. So our brain obsesses over, what does this mean? Maybe when a coach gives me a weird look, what does that mean? If it's a scrimmage and I have a drive and I don't score a touchdown, what does this mean about me? We're meaning-making machines, and it can get to a place where we self-destruct. And I can honestly say that I never once beat out a quarterback. In my entire career, I never beat out a quarterback. They beat themselves, and they removed themselves from the starting position. And I just happened to not beat myself. And so that's what I help guys do is, I'm not going to help you beat out other quarterbacks. I'm going to help you not beat yourself. And inevitably, you not beating yourself, you're going to rise to the top. And so it's an inside out game where we focus on their identity. First and foremost, like what you believe about yourself is everything. And that ties into then true confidence, not arrogance. Arrogance is tied to insecurity. Confidence is tied to humility, right? And then lastly is just like tools in the toolbox for them to rely on when the going gets tough. And I'm not there to coach them through, to then be their own mentor, to be their own coach. Because you gotta be your own parent, your own coach, your own mentor. You gotta be the person that you are inspired by. Like, who I'm most inspired by in my life is not some famous person. It's me in 10 years. That guy, if you would have told me at 17 years old where I am today at 27, I would be extremely inspired by that guy. And so just taking all this external focus and turning it inward.
I love that. So how does that help a quarterback after he's thrown his third pick in the game. Comes off to the sidelines, and his coach is ripping him a new one up one side and down the other. How does it show up when, in the NFL when a guy gets overdrafted? How does that show up in college when you think you're going to be the starter and they get a guy through the portal that's got more experience than you do? How does that show, so now you're a conscious quarterback. You're doing this. I love it. You're doing the inside out game. You're trying to keep your mind from being focused on just creating meaning to everything that doesn't even have any meaning. It's like I used to tell my clients all the time, you could be walking down the hall at the facility and the coach doesn't even look at you. And all of a sudden you're thinking all these thoughts. He didn't like me. He didn't even want to draft me. He doesn't want me to make the team. All these things when what he's really thinking about is his honey-do list because he just got off the phone with his wife. And she's like, when you get home, you better carry out the trash. And he's thinking about that.
So here's the funny thing about football is on the outside, I mean, you could argue some of the most confident people in our society are athletes. I would also say the most insecure people in our society are athletes. And it's because there's specifically in Division I football and professional football, everyone, whether they admit it to themselves or not, knows how replaceable they are. How they know that they have this window of time. How there is someone at this position before them, there's someone at this position after them. And that is such a daunting thing. It is a shitty feeling as a human, feeling like you're replaceable. You wouldn't want to feel like that with your husband or wife. You wouldn't want to feel like that with your family because you don't. You're not replaceable. In regular society, you're not replaceable. No one can replace you as a brother. No one can replace you as a husband. No one can replace you as a father. You're very replaceable as an athlete. So I think fully embracing that, hey, I'm here for a limited amount of time and I'm here to fully shine, to be confident, to know who I am, to know myself, and to fully relish in this time right now, because this will pass and I will not be a football player at some point. Let's just put that on the table. Because I'm not living in La La Land where that doesn't exist. And there's guys that genuinely block that out. And they live in delusion that they're just going to play forever, which is why the crash after football is over is so hard, because you lived not in reality. Well, I think where it shows up is if you can fully live in reality of what this is, and still be confident and still be who you are and allow yourself to shine, even though you know that this is a fleeting profession. I think those are the guys that look back and they made the most out of their career. They made the most money, they made the most impact, they made the most plays, and they can move on from their career with a smile on their face and go shine in the next phase of life. That's the goal for these guys.
Amen. I got a couple more questions for you, Brock. Doing phenomenal. I'm learning a lot. You went and played international football. You played for the Dresden Monarchs. You went over to Hungary and played. What was the pleasant surprise that you got, that you learned about yourself, you learned about football, you learned about the world, that you wouldn't have learned but for the fact that you did that for the last couple of years?
Yeah, that's a great question. First and foremost, whoever's listening to this and has made it this far in the podcast, if you haven't traveled internationally, that is the number one thing I think you need to do this year as soon as possible. I think there's nothing more impactful to our brains and to our spirits, again, than getting very uncomfortable and being on a different continent. You don't even realize how uncomfortable you are being outside of the United States until you're outside of it, and people aren't speaking your language. Your phone's not working like it should. Your money isn't the same money. There's just all these little things that add up to where your nervous system's like, whoa, it's on high alert. And you see how much different people live, and you see the different priorities people have. I grew up in America, and I grew up in very, very high level competition sport environments. I thought that's what life was people like that. No, that was just the environment I was in. So when I went over there, it like completely popped this bubble I had of like, oh, everyone wants to be the 1%. Everyone is striving and working and da 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 da. No, like there's so many different walks of life. There's so many different types of lifestyles, and there's so many different priorities you can have in life. And I think it freed me up of, hey, like different paths are all beautiful. It doesn't have to be just this one type of way of, having to be hyper competitive in everything you do. And you have to be in the 1% and you have to be a millionaire and you have to, or else you're a failure. That's not true at all. Everyone gets to decide what is success for them. And I think that's the biggest thing I learned of playing international football is, and I'm not here to say that I lowered my standards. It was just, I became more aware of more and therefore got to become more authentic of who I am, because the more aware you become, the more choices you have. The more choices you have, when you decide on a choice, the more authentic it is. And so I think I became way more authentically myself playing international football because I became way more aware of different walks of life.
Last question, Brock. And you're right. Some people have already checked out. The diehards are still hanging in there. We're
Come
right
on.
at it. All right. So you and your brother were the two people that I experimented with pro mindset the most. And pro mindset has been, an evolving like principle for the last 30 years for me. And you've adopted a lot of those principles, and I'm sure you've rejected a few too. What are the one or two principles, one, if you want to just focus on one, that really, really has helped you in your career, in your ability to overcome adversity, bounce back, show up, have a higher standard, rewrite a new story, all those kind of things. Which one resonates the most with you? And what have you, perhaps, if it has resonated with you, it's probably something you've taken with you to Conscious Quarterback.
Yeah, I think the number one, I think a lot of the concepts I think it took a while to fully embody. But I think the one that I think has stayed with me, I'd say from the beginning to the end, that you taught Johansson and I, is raise your standards. That's the number one mindset one. I would say from the very beginning, you always set the precedent that if your standard is higher for yourself than your coach's standard for you, there's no pressure, right? Because it shifts from, I just want to be good enough and meet the standard of my coach, to then again, we're focusing on ourselves. Wait, I know who I am. I can be one of the best players on any given field that I'm on. Why? Because my standard for myself is higher than what my peers and what my coach has for me. And so then who are you reporting to then? You're not reporting to your coach. You're not reporting to your teammates. You're reporting to you. Your report card is with yourself. And I think Johansson and I have had that from a very young age. And I think that is what carried us through and allowed us to be elite, was our personal standard.
That's awesome. Okay, Brock, what is, I got one more. What is the one thing that you've learned through this journey of playing football? Because you may have 5 boys, you may not have any. You may have 5 boys and they all want to play football. You may have 5 boys that want to play golf. But what's one thing that what's that?
I hope they do.
Yeah, I hope they do too.
I hope I'm going to Palm Beach to watch some golf tournaments.
You want to play with them. What's the one thing that you've learned from your journey that you have in your back pocket that you want to make sure and instill in your kids, and not just your boys, but your kids too?
Definitely just the character development of football. That's the number one thing that I could not be more grateful for of going down this journey. And I'm so thankful that you set that environment for Johansson and I to be football players. And it's the type of man that we've become. I think it's super, super important to do hard things, especially in this day and age where, I mean, now more than ever, we can DoorDash, we can AI ask anything, we've got cars that drive themselves now. I mean, it's just like, if you want easy, it's here for you. If you want an easy, comfortable life, there is no problemo. You got it. And if you just look at, the history of humanity, it's not easy. I mean, to stay alive as a species is freaking difficult. So it's actually super, super important. And I think you should be intentional about doing hard shit. And I think football is extremely hard. And I'm so grateful for that hard in my life. It molded me into now a man that doesn't even need to play football anymore to have the personal standard for myself that I do hard things. I still go work out and do hard things because the benefit and what you reap from that is everything. And it's helped me become who I am today. It helps you evolve. Comfort doesn't help you evolve. Getting uncomfortable, doing hard things, doing things that you don't know if you can do, betting on yourself, getting some dirt on your hands, I think is super, super important for every generation of man. So I'm just, I don't need my kids to play football, but I do need them to choose to do hard things, to choose to bet on themselves on areas that are going to make them stretch and grow. That's all I ask of them.
Amen, brother. All right, my man, everybody, that's a wrap. That's a wrap with Craig Domann, the Conscious Quarterback Coach. Brock, where can they find you?
Instagram, bdoman19. You know where to find me.
If you know somebody that especially is a quarterback, you might want to connect them to Brock. But I want to thank you, Brock, for being on. I think this might be the second or third time you've been on, but this was the full embodiment of the man you've become.
Yes. I'm grateful, man. This was a great talk.
Holy smokes, dude. Brock's one of those guys that he can do what I can do better. He can do pro mindset better. He's doing conscious quarterback better. So I want to thank you for being on today. And I want to thank you for all you listeners that made it this far. Thank you very much. And everybody go out and have a great day. Hey, it's Craig Domann, the host of Pro Mindset Podcast. I want to thank you for listening or watching today's show. And you can catch us every week on the normal social media platforms like YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and all the listening podcast platforms. I hope you enjoyed today's show. And more importantly, I hope you gained a pro mindset insight. Please be sure to rate and review Pro Mindset Podcast. And I look forward to catching up with you on our next show.